would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello. My name is Steven, and I own a cafe called Long Dog Coffee and Treats. I am located in Old Town Orange, and I established my business on September 1st, 2024.
All right, so what inspired you and gave you the confidence to want to start your own business?
To start my own business is kind of a twofold question. When I was younger, I was a poli-sci student, and I thought it'd be interesting to get involved in politics and like maybe run for office one day. And I didn't necessarily feel like following that route on a traditional way of doing it. So I thought it'd be interesting to own a small business and then potentially become like a leader in a community, I guess you could say. I thought that would be cool to like get to know people and make relationships and learn about the commerce of how a city works. I didn't learn all of that stuff in school, so I thought like getting engaged in just like the actual community and getting involved and working with different institutions would be a way that I could learn about how a city operates and then also like meet all the people and make the connections in doing it. So I always knew I wanted to be a small business owner, and it took me a while to kind of figure out what kind of business that would be. I did admittedly kind of lose track of that path after I graduated college. I just kind of wanted to get a job and make a lot of money. And I just worked in so many different industries. Like I've worked on an ice cream truck. I've shot a t-shirt cannon. I've sold microscopes. I've worked in the medical industry. I worked for e-commerce company. I've done sales, marketing. I've done so many things. And I kind of like was creating this big list of things that I didn't want to do. And I always had like food service and hospitality as like my backup for like after I would quit a job, I'd be like, oh, I'm just going to go wait tables for a while. And waiting tables kind of evolved into working into a cafe and bakery. And I think maybe somewhere in my mid-20s, I was working in a cafe bakery, and I started to realize I really, really enjoyed the day-to-day. And I had a customer that once asked me, like, oh, do you own this place? And I did not. I definitely was nothing close to that, but it kind of planted a seed in my brain that was like, oh, someone might believe that I own a cafe. And it kind of like reignited that, oh, I do want to own a small business someday. So I spent like the last X years building up the skill set so that I could do this. And so yeah, I wasn't really a good employee. I didn't really like working for other people. I don't really like being told what to do, but I'm willing to work really hard if it means I don't have to. So that's kind of the long story of how I got here.
I find that so fascinating because, like, I'm the same way. So, like, I guess I'm just curious, like, how did you eventually segue into, like, coffee and baked goods? How did that spark your interest?
Initially, it was not my interest. I knew I really liked people. So that was, like, one aspect of the job that is associated with the cafe that you can't really take out of it. After I was a student, I really enjoyed learning, but I didn't always enjoy like the structured school environment. Instead, like I was planning on going to law school, but I was really over being in school. So I was like, I'm gonna just like do my own thing, but I still had like an appetite for knowledge. And so I got like really into history, and I just kind of kept falling down different rabbit holes. And working in a coffee shop, I realized that coffee was like the ultimate rabbit hole. There's science, there's art, there's history, there's geography, there's politics. There's so many aspects of coffee that you can just kind of absorb information. So that just kept my attention. And so after a while, I was just so interested in it that I just became kind of like decent at it because it kept my attention, so to speak. And then baking is also really similar in that it's an intersection of science and art. So that there's like technical things, but then there's also a lot of wiggle room to express yourself a little bit. So the two were just interesting topics for me. So because they kept my attention, I ended up practicing them a lot and then got good at it so that I could get to the point where I could keep learning. I'm still learning a lot. I'm not like great at it. There's still people that are much better at both those things than I am. But it's something I can do to a point that I'm like, oh, I could probably sell this. And then also at the same time, it keeps me interested so I can keep learning and I can stay a student and not get like too, full of myself.
That's really awesome. I have a question. Another one. What was the process like from start to finish in opening your own business? Like, was there any unexpected obstacles that you faced? Or could you just tell me a little bit more about that?
The process of opening the business feels like it's still in its infancy. I'm not like I'm open technically, and customers come in and I sell them things, but I feel like I'm still just getting started in regard to like my overall vision for the business. I'd say the most important part of the business for me was developing the skill set. So I kind of felt like if I was willing to humble myself and work a minimum wage job, I would learn it from the ground up. Any business I've ever done, I've always gravitated more from the people at the bottom than the people at the top, because I feel like those are the people that really move the needle and really like have the most influence, and they're just like more enjoyable people to be around. So I never really minded like working as a busboy or a dishwasher, or just like, I don't know, I took on all the roles at like a food service place that you can imagine. And I enjoyed them. I never really felt like I needed to develop past it. And B, it just kind of felt like, oh, the more I do it, the more I get better at it. I'll have like a holistic view of how this type of business is supposed to run. So that was like the main, for me, I think that's like the main asset I have in running the business, is just having like a really intimate knowledge of how the business works, from like cleaning the drains to, upselling customers at the register and everything in between. And then there's like the logistical parts of like filing for permits and insurances, and going and working through the city, and developing relationships, dealing with business brokers, and like all these like extracurricular activities, which I'm still developing. The more I do it, the better I get at it. But that's also kind of something that I'm still trying to develop that as the business grows. I'm kind of growing that skill set as well. Yeah, that's kind of all there is to it. I think it feels like there's a lot of obstacles to opening your own business, but if you really want to do it and you're willing to take a big project and break it down into smaller pieces, it's actually very accessible. Getting like filing for an LLC and getting like a business name and registration was easy. It's like it's not hard to do. There's like not a ton of barriers of entry. I think the flip side of that is doing it well. This is an awful analogy, but I think like owning a business is like having kids, and like anyone can do it, but doing it well takes like a lot more determination and discipline and planning. So like yeah, that's kind of where I am at with that. Like I own a business, but that wasn't really my goal. My goal is to own a successful business. So I feel like in that regard, I'm still working.
If we're talking about the aspects of owning a successful business, as of right now, this moment, what are you most proud of from starting this cafe? And has a specific goal you had in mind been accomplished through this?
What I'm most proud of is definitely not like an individual thing, but the sum of many parts put together. Specifically, I guess if it could be one thing, it would be that people have started to identify this space as a place where they can come, and I guess it's called like the third place or the third space, where people can have like a space outside of their work or their home where they feel comfortable. I also like believe firmly that I'm in the business of nourishment. So giving people, like, you have to eat. That's like the crux of this business for me, was that there'd always be a demand for coffee and pastries and sandwiches and acai and granola and yogurt and all these things, because people need calories to live. And so they have this variety of options for like, you're going to do it every single day. You have to eat something, or you have to drink something to stay alive. So that kind of gives me like a pipeline already. And it's just about differentiating myself and having like a good quality product and serving it honestly, so that people will choose to do that here. So something that makes me really proud is I have a customer that comes in the morning with her dog, and she gets a coffee and she gets a little treat for her dog, and then she gets one of our scones that comes right out of the oven, like right when we open up. So that's like an intersection of all the business parts, like the bakery, the cafe, and then the fact that we have like dog treats for her dog too. So like, that makes me very proud that she's the vision of the business is to be accessible in all these different aspects, and she comes in and like uses a little bit of it each. But also, yeah, all the other customers that come in make me really happy too.
How do your values as a person align with how you run your business? And have any values changed in starting this cafe?
How my values align with the business feels like a loaded question. I just like, I think my only main value is just like be nice to people. So it's like on a personal level, just try not to like cause damage to anyone. Do you and try to be nice to everyone. I do have values for the business itself, which are quality, honesty, and nourishment. So I try to use those values as like a compass for decision making. So when I get ingredients, I want them to be the highest quality. If things are like maybe getting questionably like stale or like the produce isn't fresh, then I want to know quality first, so I can just discard it and stick to the really good stuff. And that kind of comes into play a lot when I'm like trying to do decision making. I'm like, oh, do I get the good one or the cheap one or like the mid one? I'm like, no, I want to do the good stuff. Like this is going to be one of the values that I really try to push. So hopefully that comes through with the product, but it's something I try really hard to stick with. The honesty part is like I try to be pretty transparent about everything in regard to the business, like where I get my ingredients, how I make things. 90% of the products I have, we bake fresh or make fresh here, and then 10% of it comes out of a freezer. And I bought it from Restaurant Depot, and people like it, so I have it. But if they ask me like, oh, did you bake this here? Do you make it? I'll be like, no, this one actually we bought. Or I'll try to say like in a nicer way, like we sourced this from another location. But I think being honest with people is going to pay off in the long run. I don't want to, say something and then have it like blow up in my face. It's too easy in this industry to try and like pretend like everything is homemade or try to like, it's so easy to just like fool people or dupe people. And so many people do it. And so I take it really personally to try not to. I think if I keep myself honest, then keep myself accountable in that regard, then I will have a higher quality product, and hopefully people resonate with that aspect. And then the nourishment value is important because, like I said earlier, like I'm in the business of nourishing people. I want people to have good stuff in their body so that they can have fuel to go do something else. It's like you're giving food to teachers, students, doctors, lawyers, people that are going to go do good things in the world. So the idea of using good ingredients and giving them good fuel is really important to me. So those are my 3 values for the business, and I try really hard to stick to them.
Is sustainability and ethically sourcing your goods a priority for you?
It's something between priority and a preference, and it's kind of a blend between the two. I think in 2024 we've become really knowledgeable about
Really awesome.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thanks for coming in. I can't wait to see the picture. I'm Steven. Steven? Yep. I can't wait. Amazing. Thank you guys so much for coming in. Yeah, I've had 2. There's Frankie. He was an okay dog. And then there was Rocky. He was a really good dog. So this place is mostly after. Yeah. That dog, he was a little bitey, a little barky, knocked over garbage cans. Yeah, I think so. They have a lot of personality. Yeah, me too.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The date? This September. Hello. Oh, my screen fell off. Okay. As we become more educated, I think we're starting to discover more how unethical like our lifestyles are. So I'm looking around at like my plastic lids and my straws and all my like disposables, and it's kind of an uphill battle, to be perfectly honest. And then everybody has their own definition of ethical and sustainable. So it's something that I'm really sensitive to, and I want to satisfy my own moral compass, but I don't know if it's like totally possible to do this kind of business and be like perfectly ethical.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally valid. It must be very difficult to be sustainable in this market and in this time. Like, it's not something that we've really figured out yet, so I think that's totally valid. But segueing into the next thing, what's your process in sourcing your goods? And could you just talk a little bit more about that and like how you source your beans and where?
I feel like where you source your products, and the beans especially, is one of the best ways to try and run this business from an ethical perspective. Specifically the beans, there's a lot of different kinds of relationships and criteria that you can have for how you source your beans. I admittedly try to lean on my vendors to have the ethical relationships for me. So the company that I get my beans from specifically is called Klatch, and they have what's called direct relationships with their farms. So you can get your beans off like a market. You can use a broker. There's something called fair trade for coffee. These are all these different criterias that try to ensure that the beans are sourced ethically. But with direct trade or direct to market beans, you have the company directly going to the farms themselves and working right with them. So you kind of cut out the middleman. And Klatch has been operating for like 30 or 40 years. And I know that they have really good relationships with their farmers because I've worked for the company and I've met the family that buys the beans. And I know how important it is for them. So that's one of the reasons I use this company, is because I know that they care about the farmers. They know the farmers. They've hosted dinners with them. And so from that regard, I feel like I'm kind of quote unquote on the right side of history, knowing that they might be paying a little bit more because they know that fairly treating the farmers is going to ensure a long-term relationship for them. A lot of people ask me, is your coffee organic? Is your coffee pesticide free? And that's not always the case. Because for a small farmer to grow a crop and not use any pesticides, they run the risk of having their entire crop fail. They could get eaten up by bugs, and the investment that they made in the beans could potentially knock them out of the business, and now they don't have any income. You could be working with people that are only going to go through certified brokers, and if those brokers are unethical or involved in politics or shady business, then you don't know if your beans are being sourced from a farmer that's being treated fairly. So it's best to find coffee sourcing companies that have direct relationships with their farmers, and especially that can share the story of how they work with the farmers. And so that's something I know I get with Klatch, and I appreciate from them. Having met them on an individual basis, having been trained by some of the business owners, I believe that they're good people. And that gives me confidence that the beans I get from them are being sourced ethically. And that is actually really important to me. So I'm glad to have a relationship with them. The same is true, though, for like where you get your disposables, where you get your produce. I try as much as I can to work with local suppliers, because I know that they usually won't cut corners because they have to try a little harder versus the larger, more established producers that have large distribution channels and have access to lower cost materials and lower cost goods, because some people are just looking for the dollar. But I think if you're trying to be a little bit mindful of your vendors and do a little bit of research, you can do your best to put yourself in a position where you don't feel like people are getting taken advantage of.
That sounds like a difficult process to try to follow those rules and guidelines that are within the cafe industry. Knowing that you're making an effort to try and source your materials ethically, do you make your own products or goods? How's that process like? Do you have a baker? Do you make them yourself? Do you get them from your local businesses? And do you believe that these products that you sell are sold at a fair price, especially in the economy that we're in?
I do everything I can to make my own ingredients, make our own pastries, make my own syrups. Mostly out of pride, just because I've learned how to make these recipes, and I think that the ones I make are of a higher quality from a nutritional standpoint than the ones that I could be getting from frozen or from a Costco or something like that. The ethical tracing and sourcing of each individual ingredient is nearly impossible. Trying to figure out where the flour comes from, where the sugar comes from, where the honey comes from. Well, the honey is maybe not a good example because you can source local honey. But if you try to break down every single ingredient and where it comes from, I wish I had the manpower and the ability to do that. I don't. I mostly just try to put good faith and rely on good faith with the people I work with. But in regard to making things in-house, I think that's the best way to protect yourself from having bad reputation of being someone that's just buying things from the store. Like, you can just buy everything from Smart and Final and put it in your case and try and sell it that way. It's not the route I really wanted to choose, and I was sticking to my guns on that. And I try to sell my products at a fair price. Part of that is to be at a competitive advantage compared to a lot of the places in the circle that sell things at an exorbitant price. So I think that by having prices fair, that gives me competitive footing in regard to bringing in customers. And also, like, I want to sleep at night. I didn't get into this business to make a ton of money. If I wanted to make a ton of money, I'd have gone into finance. I really just wanted to make things that people liked, and that's like something that's kept me in the business. So it's something I'm trying to continue doing. It makes me feel like I have like an honorable job, and it's something that I wasn't always getting in other jobs I had. So I try to stick to that, and as long as I can sleep at night after consuming all the coffee I do, then I think I'm doing okay.
That's such a special thing, especially like handing somebody that cup of coffee in the morning, and it could just make their whole day. It could make it or break it, you know, and the special interactions that you have with people. I've seen it, like, I feel like it just brightens everybody's day, and it's just such a special vibe that you create here. So I can really tell that, like, that's where it comes from. Everything I feel like feels very genuine here. So I think that it's cool that that message is really coming across.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I was raised by parents that love me, and I feel like I got a good education. So it's almost like a responsibility to take what I've been given and try and run a business with good values. Not everyone has the advantages I've had in life, and I try not to take them for granted. I try to use what I have to do something, not evil. So it comes from a place of like trying to do it the right way, because I think I have the tools to do it the right way. So that's kind of my compass in regard to that.
That's awesome. So, on our final remarks, what legacy do you wish to be imprinted onto the community through your business?
I don't know what legacy I want imprinted on the community through the business. I am trying to run an honest business and provide things that I'm proud of. And I really care about the people that come into this place and purchase the products as well. So far, it seems like people are resonating with that. And so if the business is successful, I think that it will be a reflection of the customers feeling respected. And I try really hard to do something I'm proud of. And if I get to stick around and people seem to, vibe with what I'm doing, then that's going to be really good for me. The longer people come in and support the business, the longer the business will get to be here. So hopefully that all works out.
All right. Thank you so much for your time in answering these questions. And I hope that you do become a successful business.
Thank you.